is really picking up steam as far as even HR is concerned. And exactly that's what we will talk today about, how we can leverage design thinking for HR in HR profession. With me, I have very expert panel from diverse industries. And so I will welcome them. But before that, let me give you a little background about Enabling World, which is the host for the session today, with the company which I represent very briefly. So first of all, we are very proud to mention that as Enabling World, we are just completed 10 years of our inception. We are boutique organization. So thank you very much for all your support and blessings, because of which we have been able to reach this milestone, and we look forward to our journey further. So a big thank you to the team, to our co-founder and the clients, most important, the clients who have supported us all through. So thank you very much. After that, very brief on what we do. We are into diverse areas like HR technology. We are into leadership and talent development, HR consulting advisory, talent search, and employee well-being. In fact, employee well-being, D&I, and HR functional is becoming the core strength for us as Enabling World as we go along. And HR technology has also remained a forte for us. So that's a very brief introduction of what we do. Now coming to a time to welcome our experts today, and let me start from the stalwart, our senior, Mr. Shyam Vishwanathan. And Shyam is what I know, I can go on for the full session if I give his full introduction. He's such an illustrious career, but in brief, if I say, he is an expert on design thinking. He has leveraged for globally, not only for HR, for business. And he has handled maybe in excess of 30, 40 large projects internationally on design thinking. So he's really an expert, and he kindly agreed to my request. He's very busy, but he kindly requested to agree to my request and join the session. So Shyam, we look forward to hear from you and your expertise and guidance to HR fraternity on, how can we adopt design thinking, right? And we'll hear more about it. Then we have Pragya. Hi, Pragya is a young professional. She's working with PepsiCo, GBS. And Pragya, if you can say hi so that people can see you and recognize. All right. Thank you very much for joining. And I had a fortune of working with her on some projects. We're doing some interesting project on hybrid working and return to work, where PepsiCo is known for their design thinking. Every function, from top to bottom, they leverage design thinking like anything, right? If you hear I heard the ex CEO, Nori, and she was talking about how design thinking, they create design centers, and they're really deep into it. And HR is not left behind. Pragya will talk more about it, but we had a good, exciting time where we're doing a project along with her on hybrid working, which is becoming a very big challenge for HR professionals. How can we leverage design thinking in that area? But she, I'm sure, would have many, many other experiences. Pragya, thank you very much for joining it today. Then my friend, last but not least, Sunil from IBM. So if you cut my veins, you will find some blue blood, IBM blood. I spent good 11 years, and my introduction to design thinking, I owe it to IBM, not only as a subject, but as practice. We ran some projects using design thinking and had the fortune of learning design thinking in the design centers at Texas, Austin, which is the Makkah Medina, if I call it, of the design thinking. That's the center. So it's a very different environment. I had the fortune of learning it there. But Sunil, thank you so much. And he has led very large businesses as HR partner. Today, he is a specialist in HR, very senior professional, and he's a good friend. I had worked with him for many, many years. So thank you, Sunil, for joining in and sharing your experiences.
Thank you, Sanjay. Very honored to be in the midst of all of us.
Perfect. So let's dive deep into it straightway. And one suggestion, guys, keep it interactive, right? And keep your questions coming. Keep yourself on mute for better management of the session, but keep putting in the chat. And I would request the panelists, don't hold yourself, right? If you see a comment, if you have a viewpoint, keep chatting, because that can be a parallel session that will be running, right? So let's get into it. What I'll do is we have a session for about 60 minutes, so another 55 minutes. We will keep last few minutes if we have time for the interactive question answer from the audience, but I think keep putting it right away into the session as we are getting along. Okay, so let's begin. So let me, Sham, I can't resist but to start with you. You being the veteran, our senior, and also the great experience you have with design thinking. Can you maybe let me start? Otherwise, Kalyan will not spare me. We want to start with asking you people. I mean, we have more than 55 people who have joined. What is your awareness level on design thinking? Where are you today? I'll run a small poll. Let me see if it works. Can you put in the chat, put on a scale of 1 to 4, put 1 to 4, where are you today in design thinking? What's your awareness? You are an expert, then you can join the panel, contribute. If you don't know, then it'll be good opportunity for you to learn, right? What is the ranking?
Yeah, I can see around 48% of participants, they feel that they are beginner in this awareness state of design thinking, and around 33 people, they are not at all aware of. So they want to learn more from the session. And around 18% people, they are practicing design thinking, and then they want to excel and be expert into this. Let me.
So that's I think good, good mix where people and do contribute with your experience as we go along, right? So all right, so let's begin. So Shyam, let me start with you first. Can you unpack it for us in simple terms? What is design thinking? Very simple terms.
Yeah, see, it had its origins, I think, in the late 70s out of Stanford. Like many movements that have happened in the area of business or leadership, it had its origins in academia. And from time to time, we have seen certain movements that grow beyond being a movement that actually become defining for more than a decade or so of how business is run, how business is conducted. Many of the people on this call may recall in the late 70s, early 80s, we had the Kaizen movement, which a lot of us were very excited about, continuous incremental improvement. By the late 80s, nobody was talking about Kaizen, not because it had become irrelevant, but because the best-in-class companies had either made it a muscle memory, made it a habit, or they had become irrelevant, right? Then the next differentiator was, if you all recall, TPM, TQM. There was that whole era when it took business by storm, and everybody was, the enlightened organizations, enlightened leaderships were absorbing something akin to TPM or TQM. By the late 90s, it was not causing as much excitement because the best-in-class companies had absorbed it, and the other companies were either acquired or had become irrelevant. Then came Six Sigma, SEI, CMM level 5. And the best-in-class companies during the first decade of this millennium went about internalizing, mastering, and making it an organizational memory or habit. By 2010, either you had mastered Six Sigma or something like it, equally effective, or you were not where you should be as an organization. The current wave of differentiation of the way we add value in any industry, in any business, to the customer, internal or external, is design thinking. So it's a current movement. In the next few years, design thinking will not create as much excitement. There will be the next movement because it would have become muscle memory to the leading players in every industry. So it is a way of creating a user experience, not solving problems, but creating a user experience, which is the latest key differentiator in industry, is one way of putting it.
Okay, thank you very much for taking us through the history and also in very simple terms what it is all about. And Pragya or Sunil, if you want to add anything to first, what is design thinking? Very basic stuff, because we have a lot of people who are new to this subject. in simple terms? Anyone who wants to add on to what Shyam
So,
has beautifully captured.
Sanjeev, let me take a stab at this, right?
Sure.
To add to what Shyam has said, I feel that design thinking is both a philosophy, at the same time, it is also a process. I think that, this gives a user very simple 4 or 5 steps, which allows them to do problem solving, although this is not exactly a problem solving tool, but it allows them, or it gives them a structure how they can approach their problems. And once they have these steps, they can apply them to get to a point where they're delivering best in class consumer experience. And design thinking is nothing but, a set of or a way of thinking in which we prioritize a customer or a consumer above everything else. And we try and empathize deeply with them. So I feel that design thinking is something that is deeply rooted in empathy. And I think it is a way of problem solving. It helps in creating solutions that are best in class for consumers.
Perfect. Great. I think thanks for adding that perspective, Pragya. And empathy, I feel, is the core, right? Is the heart of the whole design thinking. And we'll talk a little more about it as we go along. Sunil, coming to you, why do you think it is relevant for HR? I mean, HR, before you go there, I personally feel, and we have a lot of colleagues from HR fraternity and business alike, the industry has gone for a change, right? The way we work, it has completely changed, right? In last 2.5 years, right? And I'm sure many of us would have opportunity to reset a lot of processes. It's no longer the way it used to work earlier, right? And an opportunity for us to redesign HR, reset HR function, some of the key processes, isn't it? Because the needs have changed. So 2 questions. One, why do you think it is relevant for HR? How it is relevant? And especially in this current context, post-pandemic, just your comments, your views.
So I'll take a step back in terms of what is design thinking in itself. Like in simple words, it's a creative problem-solving process with a human-centric approach. Earlier, all that we did was we looked at the process, what was the end-to-end, we worked on the workings of it, and that's about it. If there was a break in the linkage somewhere, we kind of fixed that and we continued with the process. But in the whole component of design thinking, the human-centric approach is the heart of it. Like we say, customer is the king. And we look at empathy. We say, what is it? We go back to an experience. Earlier we said process, HR implemented a process, and that was it. And so at some points in time, we go beyond that, take a step back and ask the 5 whys. Why are we doing this at all in the first place? And then when you ask the questions of why, you get some sort of answers. Usually what happens is we rush into problem solving. Right? Sometimes it requires it based on situation, but at post solving that, it's always good to take that step back and see what is the human-centric part of that whole piece. So while we look at it, we play the role of a catalyst, a transformation role. Sometimes, maybe in the past, we thought that design thinking was business, right? But actually, we are part of business. We need to know business as well as business knows business. Right?
Actually, I like some people say we are the business. I mean, partnering business. We're part of we are the business.
We are the business, right?
Yes. True.
And so, therefore, in that whole amalgamation and the partnership that we do with business, sometimes you hear business say that HR does not understand. But actually what they mean is HR does not understand business. We know HR well. And so therefore to understand business and to see the employee at the center of it. Today in the pandemic, everything's just gone whack. Yeah. Trying to get people back to the workplace, processes, systems, and the whole thing. So therefore, we bring in a lot of value when we do design thinking to business and to ourselves. Right? Like how they say sometimes the shoemaker son has no shoes, right? But I think it's important for us as we bring value to business to also bring value to ourselves.
to our own function. Absolutely.
Right. And so the whole thing of employee experience plays like a huge important role because the productivity was high. Right? We take off areas that we don't really need, bring in more objectivity to it, bring in more productivity, and thereby in that whole process we increase the value that we not only bring to ourselves but to the organization as a whole.
So two key points you're saying, as Pragya said. One, we are in experience economy, whether it's an employee or a customer, right? Anyone, it's an experience economy, and design thinking is about creating a great experience, right, for the users. And interestingly, we say it's a human-centric approach. If not human resources, then who else will use design thinking, right? I mean, it's all human-centric, and if we can't use, then who else will use, right? So it's ironical, isn't it? So great. So let me ask Shyam. Shyam, you have seen design thinking being used for business across, and you have led projects or initiatives multi-year and for business globally, right? Why do you think, in your view, HR is slow today also? I mean, the poll said this is a very good representation of our HR fraternity, mostly from HR fraternity from across the businesses, right? And we can see the awareness level, right? They're only, 18% of this population said that they know or they're practicing design thinking, right? And a large part, good 80% plus, they do not know, or they have very basic level of awareness. Why do you think, as a business leader, Shyam, HR is slow in adopting, right? It's a two-levelable. No one stops us, but why are we slow in adopting design thinking for HR? What's your view? Candid view.
5 reasons.
Wow.
Reason number 1, we are still evolving in understanding that a customer is a customer, whether it's an internal customer or an external customer. Most organizations, when they say customer, they are referring to the external customer. The internal customer, unfortunately, goes under the radar. Reason number 1. Reason number 2, we are all trained, not only HR, but any functional area, whether you're in ops, supply chain, finance, sales, it doesn't matter. You're trained to be solution seekers. You're told from the time you start your career, find the solution. Here is a problem, find the solution, find it quickly, right? And whatever solution you find has to be found very fast. And it must be technically viable and financially viable, both feasible and viable. Otherwise, it's not a solution. So in this haste to find solutions, most people, including in HR, tend to fall back on past experience and past knowledge as the database of solutions. You try and fit some solution that's worked for you in the past to solve a problem because of the urgency. Whereas design thinking encourages you, more important than solutions are the questions you ask. Are you asking the right questions? Are you asking the kind of questions that your internal customer or your external customer has not even thought of? Because if you had taken the external customer's viewpoint, our mobile phones would still have a QWERTY keyboard, because that's all the customer would have known to ask for. If you'd asked him, what do you want? Oh, give me a better QWERTY keyboard. Are you able to ask the questions that your internal customer has not even thought of asking? Second point. So we are still learning that, moving beyond solutions to questions. The third, design thinking teaches us, as Pragya and Sunil would agree, a mantra called HMW. How might we? In any design thinking mature organization, HMW is a frequently used phrase. You are not paid your salary to give me 10 brilliant reasons why something cannot be done. If that is all you can contribute, please stay at home. You are paid your salary to tell me how might we? Because if I don't do it, somebody else will do it. If my HR doesn't do it, some other company's HR will do it and I will go there. So how might we? So the mental paradigm of looking at why we can't do something rather than say, how might we do it? Third reason. The fourth reason. We are used to committing specifications. This is the process. These are the things it will do. This is what it won't do. It is beyond curriculum. Or these are my product specifications. This is what my product will do. This is what my product won't do. Design thinking does not promise specifications. Design thinking promises how will you feel emotionally when you use my product. It does not say my product will work at 50 degrees centigrade. It won't work at 51 degrees centigrade. My process will work under these conditions. It won't work. It just simply promises, design thinking promises, when you use my solution, when you use my process, when you use my product, how will you feel emotionally? Will you want to use it again and again? Will you want to deal with me again and again? That is the paradigm shift that HR has. Many parts of HR still are on that journey. The fifth reason is that if you break HR in the life cycle of any employee, 7 stages. How does the employee get selected? How does he experience the selection process? How does he get inducted into the company? How does he or she experience the induction and onboarding? How does the person get trained? How does the person engage with the company? Trust, pride, camaraderie, whatever are the components of engagement of an employee. 4, 5, how does the person grow within the company? 6, how is the person evaluated? And 7, how is the person exited? Whether the person leaves the company or the person retires. So 7 key stages of the customer journey of an internal customer in an organization.
Yeah.
HR has been more focused on the process of each of these 7 rather than on the emotion of each of these 7. And therefore, HR, the problem, my final statement here, sorry for a slightly long answer, Sanjeev. The day HR stops calling itself HR, a resource is limited. Coal is a resource. Oil is a resource. Crude oil is a resource. It will get depleted one day. The day HR sees itself as HS, human source, a source that is infinite, that has to be nurtured, that has to be loved with empathy, that has to be cherished, there will be a mindset to quickly absorb a concept like design thinking because it comes from empathy. Design thinking's hallmark is empathy, and empathy is human source, not human resource. Resource is limited. A resource has to be exploited because it is limited. A source is nurtured, cherished, and loved. So that's
so it's a beautifully, it's a, I would say, a crash course in the complete HR life cycle given, but I think they're beautifully correlated. It's a little longish answer, but I think it really gives a grounding to us, in terms of why it is slow. And you're right, it's not. And I was reading a report, Shyam, a Gartner report. In fact, I'll circulate to people who participated. It was beautiful that it's a, if we treat, it was about implementation of technology, right, into organizations. So it was a study done by Gartner in 2020, I suppose. And they studied the employee experience or productivity was not very different. Employee experience was not very different. People who had, digital transformation, who did not have digital transformation, but they went further and they found that where the companies where they treated employees as consumers, not only as users, and there's a difference, right? If you treat employees as users versus consumer, there was a 14% difference in the employee experience and productivity, right? And so that is the difference. So it's not about the features, as you say, oh, this is what we have done. It's about what they value. If you treat employees as consumer, and design thinking absolutely a beautiful tool, not a tool as just a mindset or a framework for us to leverage that. Absolutely. So thank you very much for doing that. So let's go into some real experiences individually. That
Sanjeev, I'll just add one bit. I think sometimes we are kind of slow off the blocks in our mindset from being transactional to transformational. Somewhere we think that transformational is something that's really big, scary, intimidating. But I think if we embrace it and get into it full on, we're much more adept to create more value. So I think somewhere that lag, the shorter we have or no lag at all, that will help us to be much ahead in the game.
Absolutely right. So I think we are all saying same thing, converging gradually. It's about experience and valuing and treating employee as a customer, right? Internal customer is the most important customer for us. Absolutely. So let's get a little more real from the background. I'm sure it is helping us to get some idea about what design thinking is, why it is relevant for HR. let's get into some real examples that some of us, the expert panelists, have really leveraged, right? So what I will request, maybe Pragya, start with you, very crisp, because we have very limited time, maybe 3-4 minutes. Share a real example where you leverage design thinking. And the way I would like you to present is, what was the problem statement? Why did you even bother about using design thinking? And then how did you use, what outcomes did you get out of it, right? Make it real for us, right? Don't make it very complicated, but in simple terms. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sanjeev, I'll do my best and you can fill
I'm
in
sure
and
you will.
keep me honest. So let me share an example here with the group. So as we were all trying to get back to office post-pandemic, right? 2 years went by and all of us were working from home, and this became like a second nature to everyone else. And even organizations noticed that there is no productivity drop. Most large organizations notice that we can work remotely almost as good as we can work together. Then why should we come back? This was a big question in front of large organizations. This was the problem statement, if I may say so. And almost all big organizations were facing it as they were trying to call their employees back to office. At that point of time, it became very, very obvious and was rather common sense that there is no point for us to be sitting in office and answering our emails, something that we can do from home, or to be taking calls with other geographies. Like if I have to take a call with US, why do I need to be sitting in office? Why not at home? This will be more convenient for me to sit at home, right? And this was pretty common sense. And I think most organizations came to a point where they were accepting these truths. Yet there was a need, and we all felt that need, that we need to come back to office, and we needed to articulate why we needed to come back to office. I think even that came a little sooner than expected. We understood that, hey, we need to come together to innovate, to collaborate, to create, to celebrate, to collaborate, in case I've not said that already. Yeah. So basically, collaboration, creation, innovation is what was needed, and what is something that we needed to do together. That answer came easily as well. Now we were faced with another big question. The question was that now that we understand that there is some flexibility that we can offer to our employees, we can allow them to work a few days from home where they're answering their emails, taking their US calls, etc., and a few days in office for collaboration, for creation, for brainstorming, etc., right? Now, should we offer this flexibility equally to everyone, or should we differentiate? Now, this was a big question. Should we differentiate, and how should we differentiate? This was, I would say, reasonably big problem to solve for. And at this point of time, we came across this lovely idea that why not use design thinking to come to an answer for this, and bring in all our leaders, bring all of them together, put them in a room and brainstorm together that who should be given this flexibility, how much flexibility is good flexibility, what roles would need more flexibilities, and what roles would need less flexibility. So we came together, we applied design thinking, created personas meaning type of user, basically, right? Simply put, type of user. So basically one type of user who needs to be in office more often than the other. For example, an admin staff or an IT support staff, to an absolute other end of the staff who has all his team sitting out of US or other geographies like Australia, Egypt, etc., right? These are two extremes and everything in between. Create different personas and ask this question to yourself, that why do they need to come to office? What will they do when they come to office? How often do they need to collaborate? What is their need of celebration? What are their pain points? When we asked these questions and we came together.
And also, Pragya, if I remember, it was how should the structure work? What structure would work with this hybrid working, right? What org structure would work? I remember
absolutely,
that. Yes.
Absolutely. What org structure would work? How should we structure ourselves? How should we communicate this flexibility to them? How would our employees understand it? So all of those questions were answered using design thinking. Design thinking, again, simplifying for our users so that they don't think that this is a very complex answer. Basically, just trying to step into the shoes of our user and trying to understand that, hey, if this is an IT support staff, and if I ask him to come 5 days to office, how should I be, understanding it from their perspective? What would they do in office? How often do they need to come and collaborate, and exactly how will they be operating? So just trying to answer it on behalf of our users. And at that point,
what was the outcome, Pragya? I mean,
Mm.
very beautiful you put. So key things I'm taking from your thing. The problem was that when people are returning back to office, who should come, not come, and persona you identified, and what is their need, what is their profile, right? And then finding a solution based on that. That's the core, right?
Yes.
What was the outcome of this?
So the
Is it too early? Is it too early, or you have some early benefits?
Yes, I would still say that it is too early. We're still exploring our flexibility, but yet I would say the outcome of it is us as leadership team being able to clearly articulate why we are doing what we are doing. That is the result of it. It becomes really, really tough if as a leader of an organization, or as an HR person of an organization, if I was to say that, hey, Sanjeev, you need to come 5 days, while Shyam can come only 2 days, and Sunil needs to come 3 days. This is a difficult question to answer. I would say that after using design thinking, I'm able to articulate it in a manner that you would understand, Sunil would understand, and Shyam would understand.
Great. We'll love to hear more about it as you go along, maybe after a few months, the benefit of this, the outcome. It's too early, but so far, so you feel it has been well received. Shyam, sir, I know you have done many projects, so very crisp in 3-4 minutes, if you can share any, very impactful project or the design thinking initiative that you would have taken, and what was the problem and how did you go about in brief, and then the outcome. So I know time is short, so
I know.
you are.
So let me just give you a glimpse into one of my favorites. It was something that touched me very deeply and gave me much joy. It was for a client organization when I was in a discussion. Remarkable organization, diversity. They recruited a certain number of employees who were hearing challenged. Okay. And now they put them on certain roles. Now, there were problems. It's easy to start an initiative like that, but then the employee runs into certain hurdles. A person who is who can read text but cannot hear and cannot speak, they naturally would face certain challenges. And counseling services. Now, how do you provide counseling services for somebody like this? If it's a person who can talk, you can provide a global help desk, right? How do you provide a help desk for a person like this? And it started there. So there are people who can counsel, but this person can't hear them. Now, counseling on text by sending messages is extremely laborious. There was counselor burnout. People didn't enjoy the job. Holding a conversation in text is agonizing, particularly deep, introspective conversations. And therefore, here was an experiment. I'm coming straight to the end output of the design thinking process. You approach the whole thing with empathy. You got into ideation. You drew inspiration from different places, the IDEO model, inspiration, ideation, implementation. And then you got into implementation and tested out the prototypes. The end output, Sanjeev, straight away was this. You had a person sitting in between. You had the counselor on one side. The person sitting in between was listening to the spoken word and converting it into written text at high speed, which the hearing challenged person at the other end was viewing as text on the screen, was responding to that, and the person sitting in between was translating the text back into the spoken word. You get the point, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff. And it took us into areas that were, we said, where do we get people who can translate the spoken word into text so fast? Where do we get inspiration from? And we got inspiration from places like Vigyan Bhavan in Delhi, where you have translators, interpreters who are interpreting between, say, Modi and Putin when they are talking. So here are people who are listening to one language. As they are listening, they're converting it into another language, etc., etc.
At a speed, almost live.
At live speed, right? So you can imagine the kind of a difference in the quality of the experience that it made to both the counselor as well as the counseled person.
So as a result, then a lot of such people would have received counseling, which otherwise they were deprived of.
Deprived
Isn't
of.
it?
Yeah. And then it
Wow.
led to many other things. You started having the concept of a video call center instead of a 1-800 audio call center, a video call center, whether the person on the other side was using deaf and dumb language. You are a person who has a problem with hearing and speaking. You bought a washing machine. You got a problem with the washing machine. How do I talk to a call center when I can't speak? But I can talk on deaf and dumb language if I have a person. So this one idea sponged off into many, many other things, right? So it was a very fascinating experience. It shook me very profoundly.
And which year was this in, sir? I mean,
This
when
was
this?
2018.
2008, not far back. Now, I think if I know there's a technology also which can do that. I'm sure a lot of technologies coming which can convert a text to speech and speech to text without any human interface, also with the emotion. So I think the technology is also evolving over a period, but I think it was a great example. And I think it's again great example of the intent of being inclusive at the workplace. It's a great example as HR. I mean, because sometimes we do easy things and not give proper access of the resources or the counseling service to everyone in the resources, in the talent actually. So it's a great example for that. Thank you, sir, very much for sharing. I'll come back to you with that great and very noble, I would say, initiative, right? So Sunil, coming to you, would you like to share any real example, one of the many things that you would have done where you leverage design thinking? And again, what was the problem statement and how did you benefit from that, if you know the result already?
Sure. So this was pre-pandemic, and one of the components, like when I was doing design thinking, I was new to the team. I was leading a team of about 10 partners at that point in time.
Okay.
And we were part of a business unit that had a very complex process, extremely complex, extremely laborious. And so
What process was that?
So this was a promotion process, which had
my
many components from every stakeholder, so many stakeholders. Part of it was done manual, part of it was done on the system. And there was one question that came to my mind. I let the team go through it for the first cycle, for the first month. It was new to me, so I learned that whole process as well. And I said, going forward, this is not the kind of work I don't think we should be doing it. And the whole point of co-creation was a piece that came to my mind really strong. And we had all gone through design thinking at that point in time, and we said, let's put our learning to practice. So we co-created the whole thing. And I really don't know why why this thought came to me at all in the first place. And I said, what if at some point in time, we were not sitting together and working?
Mm-hmm. And this was before the pandemic.
This was the year 2018.
So you saw it coming. You knew it.
I really, really don't know what to say, but yeah. 2017 was when I had moved into the team. 2018, we said we have to find a way to get rid of this thing of. So we kind of put our heads together and we said, what are some of the things that we need to do? So we aligned teams on meaningful user outcomes, empathy with the kind of work and the quantum of work and the time being spent.
Okay.
Each partner would have like a full-fledged day stretched beyond the limit to do it. What were some of the playbacks that we had? We started aligning regularly. We exchanged feedback. Then we said, who are the user sponsors? Business. And so we went to the business with the business case as to how this could be. The whole thing can be demystified, for the want of a better word, and how stakeholders they don't really need to go through that kind of pain. So over the next, I think 6 months, we did the first prototype. We did some iterations, and the whole thing comes, right? Who's going to fund the tool? Where is it going to be hosted, and the whole thing. And so we had business buy-in, and we hosted on a tool that was existing with the business. And we also had people from all stakeholders. If there were to be an audit, would there be any exposure? Would there be an exposure for IBM?
It's a sensitive subject. Promotion is very sensitive subject.
PI,
right?
SPI, and the whole thing. And we came to a point where, in a short period of time, we made sure that we don't really need to be in person to be able to deliver this piece of work.
All right.
In about 18 months, we did several iterations, And one of the last iterations that we did, we actually handed it over to a set of people who could do it in less than quarter the time and not staying. We didn't need to be at office together.
And the impact or the effectiveness of the process remains same, or it got better?
It's much better.
Much better.
If there is, for example, if there is a promotion cycle, you don't go through the crazy rigor of what was there earlier. It's much more easier. And at any point in time, so the whole thing was supporting business at the point of need. And we've seen that done really well. And the whole team, we're so proud of co-creating it and looking at a live example.
So who was the user in this case? Was it the manager who has to decide? Was it HR? Who was the user in this case?
So several components. We had ops, we had managers, we had first line managers, second line, third line, fourth line, BU would roll up to the BU leader at a point in time, iterations, if it were to be sent back for any rework, everything on a tool. And even the whole process of doing the pre-work, which is humongous, now is so much more easier. I think what we used to take, say 10 hours, we probably now take 2.
Wonderful.
Productivity.
I think it's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. And I think I can imagine it's a complex problem because you had many people involved, so it took you a little longer. But you co-created with everyone, right? And you created the user
stakeholders.
So did you measure the user experience after you implemented?
Yes,
one is the time efficiency you collected. Okay.
Right. So at the end of the first iteration in 3 months, we had done the first prototype. And at the end of that,
so guys, the core of design thinking is, as Sunil is saying, you don't create the final product or outcome, right? You co-create with the users, you create a prototype, test it before you finalize. That's the core of design thinking, right? I mean, that's very important. You don't create a final product and then show to the user, now it is final. No. Okay, great.
And one learning there for all of us who sometimes we want to be perfectionists, right? So we scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub by the time has elapsed, right? And then we are at a point where we're redundant in what we've done. So to iterate as we go is a really good learning piece.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing. So there are a couple of questions. Let me take. Someone commented, it's a customer centricity wrapped in a new term now. Is design thinking same thing? I think there was a comment from someone. Is from Shruti, she says design thinking is the customer centricity concept wrapped in a new name. Shyam, over to you. You are being the most expert on this. Any comment from you on this?
No, it's not wrapped in a new name. In fact, it is taking customer centricity to a totally different orbit. And let me explain how in very crisp words. Customer centricity for long was considered as listening to the voice of the customer, right? Find out from the customer what difficulties they are what are the pain points in their customer journey. If it is a process, if it is a product, then how do they use it, how it can be improved for them. And that is customer centricity, very laudable. And it's still going on. There is nothing wrong with it. It must go on. Design thinking goes, I'll give you one example, because it's an ocean. This question is a very deep question. I'll just take one practical example. Let us assume for a moment that we are selling kitchen utensils, saucepans, frying pans, can openers, etc. Customer centricity is having focus groups in all the major cities because I want to improve the design of the can opener, and the 90% of the purchase decision is made by the homemaker. Of course, the hotels buy it, etc., etc. But the bulk volume, your representative customer, the bulge of your bell-shaped curve is your homemaker. Now, customer centricity says, go talk to 5,000 homemakers, show them the product, ask them how do they feel using it, etc. Design thinking says, talk to them, listen to the voice of the customer, listen very carefully to what they are saying, but go where conventional wisdom would have told you you're wasting your time. Let me give you an example. Go to the extremes of the bell curve. One extreme of the bell curve is a novice, a complete novice who would normally not even touch a can opener or be allowed to open a can with a can opener. A 6-year-old child is one extreme of the bell curve. Put her on the floor, with a beautiful, colorful can, a can opener made of material where she can't hurt herself, leave it there, step out of the room, watch her on the closed circuit television. See what she does. Playing with a Barbie doll, picks up the can opener, wondering what it is, picks up the can, gets bored, leaves it. Keep tweaking the design iteratively, prototypes, until you reach a stage where the 1017th child picks up the can opener, intuitively puts it on the can, twists it, and the can opens. You got a product. Now you take this learning to the mother, who is your bulk audience, the bulge of the bell curve. It's customer centricity at a very different level. You're learning from where conventional customer centricity told you you're wasting your time. Don't go to the extremes. Concentrate on the typical representative customer is what conventional wisdom taught us, right? Here, design thinking says, sure, do that, but you will get incremental innovation if you listen to the voice of the customer. You want khatarnak innovation, you want breakthrough innovation, you won't find it where conventional wisdom told you you'll find it. Go to the extremes. The other extreme is the power user. Walk into the Ritz-Carlton in Bangalore, go into the kitchen where there's a chef who is preparing 800 breakfasts for a convention. Watch him, how he moves. Watch how he uses a can opener in ways that the product manual never told you it will be possible to use it. Learn from that and give it to the homemaker. You're learning from both ends. I'm just giving one example why it is certainly not customer centricity wrapped in a new name. It goes far beyond into a dip, but of course it's an ocean.
Great, I think great explanation, Shyam. Thank you so much for making it easy for us to understand. And these are complex things, and especially many of us are, learning into it. So I think one question I would ask is, this is Pragya to you, and others can also comment on. How do we as HR, suppose we want to do something using design thinking, how do we pick up a problem statement which you think is apt for using design thinking, right? So I'm a beginner, right? How do I pick up, which problem should I pick up, which is, where design thinking can be really helpful? Any suggestion?
Sure. I think, thank you, Sanjeev. And again, this is a great question. I think any problem statement that touches human beings, or the user is or your end user is a human being, right? That is a good problem to pick. And like Shyam was implying, that how do we use that feedback? See, we've been in a process of collecting feedback for a very long period of time. In human resources specifically, right? And if we are human resource professionals, we would know that we are used to doing those pulse checks, we're used to doing those exit interviews, we're used to doing org health surveys, and we are very, very used to collecting feedback. So it's not that we're introducing something really, really new. And when we talk about UX or user experience or consumer experience, it's not that employee experience is a very new term to us. Employee experience has existed. Right? We've been collecting feedback. It's how do we deal with that feedback? What do we do with that feedback? A conventional wisdom, or let's say when I started my career, what was told to me is that you take that customer feedback and you give it to the relevant departments. So I did that. What I did is that I spoke to a bunch of employees. They spoke to me and they said, "Hey, Pragya, I'm not receiving my referral bonus in time." Now I took that feedback and I gave it to talent acquisition. That was the most relevant department to give that feedback to, people not receiving their referral bonuses in time. But design thinking teaches us that we need to look at this problem in a much more holistic manner. Now, what we do, and when I spoke to the talent acquisition partner, what the feedback, it's in a direct conversation, and she interacted with me. She said, "Pragya, people start following up with me on the referral bonus the day their candidate gets selected. The policy very clearly says that you'll get your referral bonus 3 months after. And isn't it obvious that they won't get it the moment the employee completes 3 months, but in the next month's payroll cycle?" I mean, that was very, very obvious to her, but obviously it was not obvious to the employee. Now, there's so many things that we think are obvious. They are obvious to us because we are in HR, the way we are used to interpreting a policy, but they're not very employee friendly as yet. We're still not deploying empathy to its deepest level. We're still not getting to a point where we are understanding how employee is reading the policy. First of all, we expect an employee to go and read the policy, which is a total rewards thing, right? It's a benefits thing. It's a benefits policy created by total rewards. Then the employee goes and refers it in the referral portal, which is a talent acquisition thing, because it's talent acquisition created that portal. Now, now there is a HR ops team that comes in, because they are supposed to disburse the money in the time frame, right? There are 3 different departments, and 3 of them have created their own separate portals for it, right? Employee is not looking for you to have 3 different portals that I should go and first understand the policy, then refer the candidate. Then, of course, follow up with the talent acquisition partner to understand, hey, by the way, when am I getting my bonus? And then finally, when they get their bonus, he is for sure convinced that he got it late, because the way he read the policy, right?
So it's yeah, Pragya, I think it's a great example. Sorry, we're a little short of time. So,
yes.
Basically you're saying that we get a lot of feedback through employees, through surveys, our day-to-day experiences, pick up anything which is more critical, impactful to start with, right? And
exactly.
Simple, and then start doing it, right? I think the best is start doing it, and then you will mature as you go along. Is that it?
Absolutely, Sanjeev. What I'm trying to say is that stitch it together. Don't be in a mindset till such time you will empathize more with yourself and your own construct. We are used to a construct. Our construct is our divisions. Till such time you will empathize more with yourself and your own construct. You're not empathizing enough with the customer. So you need to empathize with them. What is that they want to see? They just want to see 3 clear steps, that I refer, my candidate got selected,
It's a user experience. It's the user keep in mind.
Experience. Keep the user in mind and not yourself in mind. Every time you will bring yourself forward, you're not treating the feedback really well. What I wanted to say is that we are used to collecting feedback. We are still not used to treating that feedback really well.
True. I think thank you very much for this explanation. And I think it happens. And that's the reason, Pragya, if I see a lot of times when we do employee engagement surveys or feedback, typically you get initially response in single digit, then you keep beating people, please give feedback, please give it, because many times they don't know what we're doing with that feedback. Right? Are we really listening? And we are not communicating back to them. We are afraid of sharing it back with the employees. They already know it. They are the one who is giving feedback. What are we afraid of? So I think that's a great example. So we have a quick question from Dr. Ajit, who's another expert on design thinking. Sir, over to you. Very crisp question, because we're running short of time, but please go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much, Sanjeevji. And the question is very precise. Rather, now, when we are talking about all the steps of design thinking, how do we see scaling in design thinking?
Shyam, I have no option but to refer it to you.
Sure. Yeah, the very
good question, sir.
It's a very practical, down to earth and clear question. The very science of design thinking, if I just take, there are 3 models, as you've mentioned in your notes, Sanjeev. There's the IDEO model, there's the Stanford model, and of course, the one that IBM uses so well. The IDEO model has kept it very, very simple. The 3 I's of design thinking. You frame a challenge, you draw inspiration. The first I is inspiration. Okay, where do I get inspiration from? As I mentioned, the bulge, the extremes, and anywhere. There are people, hospital people, who have found inspiration from Formula 1 for hospital processes. So it doesn't matter where it comes from. GE Healthcare found inspiration for their MRI scan machine from Disney World. So those are all remarkable examples. So inspiration. Then you quickly go into ideation, where you get into brainstorming, and then you go far beyond brainstorming. You build on the ideas that come up, etc., etc. And finally, you come to implementation, which is prototypes. And as Godwin Sunil so beautifully put it, it is quick and dirty prototypes, not very expensive, not very perfect. Just each prototype is a platform for feedback, enough for the next prototype. So you build it like that. Now, in about typically, I think Sunil mentioned about 3 months. In my experience, even in the most complicated of experiments, design thinking projects, 6 months. Between 3 months to 6 months, your first 2-3 prototypes, iterative, improved prototypes, will give you a business case for scaling. You then go to whoever
is the decision-making authority within the organization and say, here is where we drew inspiration from. This is the output of our ideation. These are the prototypes we have conducted. This is the data from the prototype. Hence, prove. Now go right ahead and scale it up.
That is how it gets scaled. Typically, from start of the process to the scaling recommendation happens anywhere for most projects, where HR or many other functional areas, between the 3rd month and the 6th month is when it is recommended for scale. And then it's quite exciting when you scale it up.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think if I add on, Pragya and Sunil, free to add anything that you want to add. But I personally feel it's the organization also takes this as a, as a theme, that as a culture, because I remember my IBM days that even for IBM, it was HR, it was encouraged to go and take certification online. IBM had created the learning module and I just took it, right? I got fascinated. And then creating those opportunities, because business is anyway using, then HR is also using, because the whole, like Pepsi, I mean, Pragya, I'm sure, that's the culture, that's the DNA of the organization. Because if you talk DNA, people don't give a very, looks to you, right, with the question, what are you talking about? Because everyone knows about it, right, from top to bottom. It becomes the culture. Then you can scale up as far as the organization is concerned, I would say. So
Sanjeev, I'll just add one bit.
Sure.
When I looked at the topic,
quick one, because we have 3 minutes left.
Yeah, design thinking as a topic, and I looked at engaging minds as an org. There are 3 things that just permeates the heart and soul of it, right? And it has passion, commitment, results, which is design thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing that caught my attention when I saw the logo.
Absolutely. So I think as we go along, there are some questions coming up. There are a couple of announcement I want to make before we go further, and we'll stay on for a few more minutes. I'll request panelists, because there are a lot of questions coming. If you don't mind, stay for 5 minutes. But those who have committed time till 4, will close. I think a couple of announcements that as Enabling World, we are coming up with a lot of programs on the Pride Month, which is coming up, right? So you are encouraged to reach out to us if you need. We do certification workshops for design thinking for HR function. We do offer that. And we do offer consulting in terms of helping you run the design thinking workshops along with you in solving the hybrid work model, which as like PepsiCo did. I mean, something similar to that. I think it will be a great tool for people to use in case anyone is interested. You are welcome to leverage that. Now, we have a couple of minutes left. How do we prepare, Sunil, this is a question and to everyone. How do we prepare our HR team to be able to use design thinking, leverage design thinking in HR, right? Just one sentence. Sunil, starting with you. What is your advice to us as HR?
Sanjeev, I personally feel it should be a way of life. It's not something that has to be forced.
But how do we prepare? My question is, how do we prepare our HR teams, ourselves, to be able to leverage design thinking for solving any HR issues or people-related issues?
If you look at, when we say begin with the end in mind, and we know where we are at this point, where would we like to be? Mm-hmm. And so people see there's a tangible outcome, and it's not something up in the air. And they know that this is where we are today, this is what we'd like to be. And therefore, in the process, use design thinking to permeate from where we are to where we need to be.
To keep the end in mind.
The tangible result has
tangible.
to be seen. Yeah.
So Pragya, it's a rapid fire round. Over to you.
Sure.
Quick. And Kalyan, in the meantime, raise a poll, because we want to know your feedback about this session. I know 1 hour just flew by, but we'd like to know from you, how did you like this session? Kalyan, if you can run the poll, but Pragya, over to you. Quick.
Sure. Very quickly, I think the very first step is education. At this point of time, I still feel that the penetration of design thinking concepts in HR are not as high as we would like to think they are. Although design thinking is a very common name in IT organization and product organizations, but still in HR, I would think that education and learning about design thinking would be the very first step.
Sir, Shyam sir, from you.
Absolutely.
How do we prepare ourselves? Is it certification, education, or a mandate or danda? What do you think will work?
No, I think get the people, the senior most person in the HR function and the immediate team to first understand in a matter of 3 to 4 hours what is design thinking, how has it benefited the HR function, how has it benefited organizations in India and around the world. Concrete results. Get them excited about it, and then pick low-hanging fruit of high impact. Both are important. Low-hanging fruit of high impact across the organization, and put them through that 100 days or 120 days where they actually take it to prototype, show tangible results. But more important than that is learn the process of design thinking by doing it. To my experience, I've found no more powerful method of evangelizing the concept. They do it, they get excited about it, they see the benefit, they see tangible prototypes working in a scalable way. I think you've got traction. That the message goes around.
Sir, very practical advice, simple but very practical, powerful. So with that, I want to respect time from everyone. It's a little 1 minute over. So thank you everyone for joining, and especially the expert panelists for sharing your real life examples and personal experiences of how we can use design thinking in HR. And I think the time was short, but I'm sure we have generated enough curiosity around this topic. I would encourage you to reach out to us in case you need further help, or read a little more about it. Follow these expert panelists, Dr. Ajit, and many more people. It will be good fun, I can tell you. With that, stay safe, and thank you very much everyone for joining in. I enjoyed this session. I'm sure you also would have, and we'll share the recording. If you share your email addresses with us, we'll share the recording with you as well. So thank you with that, everyone. Namaskar, and stay safe.
Namaskar.
Thank you.